I'm speaking today with an inventor, a VP of engineering at Johnson & Johnson, advisor to NASA and the UN, survivor and trauma researcher whose new book, Greater Than Gravity: How Childhood Trauma is Pulling Down Humanity, which comes out in March. Michael Menard, welcome.
Thank you, Stefan. Happy to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure of mine to have you here. I've been looking through the material that you have. What's interesting is there's probably two other Michael Menards out there. If people look
Oh,
up
wow.
your name for literature, one person wrote about project portfolio management
That's
under your
that's
name.
me.
Oh, that
That's me.
is you.
That is me. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, because it's a complete twist from the work that you're doing, but I'm glad that you do that. We
Yeah.
can actually
Yeah.
sit down and talk about that because I'm also one of these people that
Oh,
understand and
really?
work through that. So, yeah.
Really? Oh, very interesting.
And I hope you're not the person who wrote about Maine because you don't
I'm
live in
not.
Maine.
I'm not. No, I'm not.
But that's the other two books that are out. One's a coloring book, and another book is simply on, I guess, on the state of Maine and all the interesting things within Maine. But that's not you. And we won't talk about project portfolio management because that's a side topic that can just drain your energy. Um, what I do want to talk about, you have two other books out. The first book came out in May 2024, which was The Kite That Couldn't Fly. I'm assuming that is that kickoff point. That's that impetus that gets you into the work that you did that created Greater Than Gravity. So
You're absolutely right.
before we get into the books, what I would really love to know is what was that driving force that made you write The Kite That Couldn't Fly, and then got your interest so entrenched that you wrote Greater Than Gravity.
Well, perfect question. So I'm one of 14 children. I had a wild childhood. Um, Grew up below the poverty level with an awesome mother, but a father who was shaped by his own trauma. And so I decided to tell my story at age 70. So I'd waited decades. And that was 5 years ago. I decided to write my memoir, and I just did it for to pass it down to my children and grandchildren because I didn't want them to forget the stories. And most of them were fun and creative, but there's a handful that were tragic. And when I decided to write it, my brothers and sisters, the ones that are living, all agreed that those stories should be told, that it should be part of the big picture. So I did that, and 25 stories, 25 life stories, real, honest, kind of raw, and shared that there's two pathways out of trauma. One is destruction and sadness, addiction, metabolic disease, mental disease, and there is some that use it as rocket fuel for success.
Right.
And that was me and a group of my siblings. But it doesn't mean we were exempt from the disorders that come from childhood trauma, which I was not aware of.
Right.
So I wrote the book, and there was an outpouring from the world. Actually, the book started to sell word of mouth, and I was hearing things like, "For the first time in my life, I don't feel I'm alone." And I had no idea what the prevalence was. So I started doing some research, and at that same time, a person found me on my cell phone through he did his research, and his name was Trent, and he had turned at age 52. He had turned suicidal and didn't know why. And his life, both mental illness and metabolic disease, set in, and he lost his family, he lost his career, and he was describing the feeling that he was experiencing as a force greater than gravity that was pulling him down. And so I started a conversation with him and a relationship with him and tried to understand where he was coming from. And I asked about his childhood, and he kind of sloughed it off. But then I dug and found that his father left him when he was 3, and that his mother was an addict and still was an addict. And got right down to the bottom of it, and he was put into an institution when he was 4 by his mother, saying that he was trying to kill his sister. Um, and he went back and dug all that up, got the records, and I encouraged him to talk to his mother, who he had not talked to in 20 years. And he discovered that his mother, well, she actually confessed that she started beating him with a wooden spoon when he was 6 weeks old. And she lied about the boy being dangerous just to get rid of him.
Mhm.
So um, he then started to go into exploration of what this thing was and found that 6 parts of his brain were damaged, were malformed. And this is all shocking me. And he was on a path to healing, and he actually ended his life while I was in the middle of writing this book. So I decided to name it. That was the trigger. That was the impetus. So there's probably 2 points. One, a point in time where I said I want to tell my story. Didn't know why, and then now I feel I know why. So I went underground. Underground meaning just isolated myself and did some original research and connected dots. And I'm an engineer. I'm a fact finder. I just give me the facts. It's just um, and I developed methodologies for portfolio management. We'll talk about that another time. But in that discovery, I came up with a methodology for executives to prioritize capital projects.
Right.
And so my mind is geared towards criteria that can help tell a story.
Mhm.
So I went under and I found here's what I mean, I can let you kind of probe further, but the headline is that the book that's coming out in March, Greater Than Gravity, reveals for the first time that childhood trauma is the worst public health threat that we have in our world.
Right.
It kills more people per day than any other disease. We lose 1,401 people a day from the direct impact of childhood trauma downstream.
Right.
Found that it's the number one cause of addiction, number one cause of suicide, and the number one cause of incarceration. And I'll ask you until you can read the book, Stefan, to trust the data until you can prove me wrong,
Right.
because it's shocking. I mean, it's just shocking. And why has it been silent? Why has the medical community, the mental health community, the social workers, the healers, the ministers and priests, and no one knows this.
Right.
So we're like walking dead. 70% of adults have experienced some form of neglect or abuse in their childhood. And they're called ACEs,
Mhm.
adverse childhood experiences. There's 10 of them. They're identified by the CDC. And if you've had 6 or more of those, you will die 24 years too soon. Not might, you will. You will. And it's really solid data. So it shortens our life. It manifests itself into mental illness, either from, mild depression and anxiety, all the way to being suicidal, to not wanting to live.
Right.
And the big news is, well, it's really not new news, but the stark reality is that when that process begins in your immune system and in your hormonal system, it creates pathways for metabolic disease, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, COPD, and you die early from it. So we've got the book reveals all of these statistics, not to scare the world, not to dig up bones, and not to start blaming parents, but to say if something's not right in your life, you owe it to yourself to take a look a little bit deeper and think, could it have been because of, your childhood? Even if you had, great meaning parents, we don't have a book on parenting. We don't know how to parent. We wing it. And if we had great parents, then we end up having great children and we follow on. But if you have trauma, there's an 87% chance you're going to pass that down to your children.
Mhm.
Therefore, generational trauma. Therefore, that's why we have 180 million adults And 50 million children in our country will experience childhood trauma this year.
Yeah. See, that's a couple of points there that come to mind as you're speaking. I would say the numbers you say 70%, and I would say the numbers are a lot higher than that because I read through the list of indicators of childhood trauma, and I'm sure that everybody's experienced something from that list in their life. I would say the number is closer to 87 to 90% of people have experienced some form of childhood trauma.
I agree completely. And here's the reason why is that the data shows that shame keeps us from revealing.
Yep.
So people aren't telling the truth. They're trying to hide it. Some of them don't even remember.
Yep.
So experts have said that they think the number's 87%, not 70. But I have to go with the data. So your instincts are absolutely right. And there are traumas in childhood like having your heart broken the first time by your first girlfriend, or,
Yes.
flunking a test, or not getting those Jordan shoes. That's not the type
No.
of trauma that changes your biology.
Exactly. No, I'm thinking more of things. One of the listing is neglect, right? Living with neglect. And
Massive,
a
massive.
lot of people, like you say I actually watched one of your interviews and you say that you grew up with the idea that this is normal. This is the way I'm
Yeah.
supposed to grow up. This is all I know. So
Yep.
how can I feel that it's different? So a lot of people, like from the 70 to the 87, and I'm still saying it's probably even higher than 87%, felt that what they went through in their life was normal. That's normal. My parents left me in the house for days at a time because they were out doing whatever they were doing, and that was normal. I was fine. I didn't die. I didn't hurt myself. That's perfectly normal. But psychologically, it's not, and it worms its way into your head the whole time. So that kind of effect, a lot of people will simply say it's normalcy. I lived with normalcy. And then they see the real world, they see the world outside themselves, and they go, wait a minute, as they get older, maybe that wasn't normal, but that's all subconscious. Their conscious mind is saying, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm great. They put the face forward, and their subconscious is going, but that didn't seem right. And that's where, as you say, it affects physiological, right? It gets in
Yep.
there.
Yes, yes. And just to touch on what happens mechanically when you say, I was left alone, I did okay, I don't. Here's what happens is that it's not normal. When you're a child, you need security and safety, and that's how our brain develops. We, but if you had times where when you were alone and you needed your mother's face or you needed to be comforted, say you fell down, what happens is your body starts to switch into the survival mode. And if you've had a lot of that, the thermostat for those hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, thermostat gets broken. So it continues to flow through childhood and adulthood. And that's what creates the metabolic. It also destroys mitochondria in the brain, the cortisol, the excess of it, and it begins the deterioration of mental health. And so, the reality we can talk. I had one psychiatrist try to tell me that it was nowhere near as prevalent and that she thought it was, in the 20%. And I just told her she had her head in the sand. She had her sand. The reality is this subject, which is all new to me, it's, I'm an engineer, but it's all new to me, is that it's affecting everyone.
Mhm.
Because even the ones of us who have not experienced trauma, like my wife, she had a blessed, very beautiful childhood, but she ended up living with a guy who was traumatized. So it affects our relationship. And I didn't understand that, but now I do. And we have a lot of behaviors that we just push off as being, oh, boys are boys, men are men. That's just life. It's not true. It's not true. If we didn't get the attachment that we needed as children and gotten put into that frame of growth and love, then we are hurting in some way. And it goes from being mild to being just evil, just awful. And we see it around us. We don't have an addiction problem in our country. We have a childhood trauma problem. 95% of all addicts, this is based on deep research, have four or more of those types of childhood trauma. There's a direct connection, right? These people aren't trying to get high. they're using it as medicine to survive.
Mm.
And, obesity, same thing. This is a different type of addiction.
Yep.
Gambling, sex, shopping, it's all, we're all malformed and we need to thrive instead of just survive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you cited an example of yourself where you said that you succeeded so well in your roles because you were driven to achieve. That the
Yes.
drive and the need, the necessity of achieving for you was an addiction. And I can see,
And
and I mean, as you're
yeah,
saying, even though it's a
of
positive
course.
one, it's
Yeah.
an addiction.
Yeah, but there's a price, and we do it. Those of us, I mean, I now understand why I've done, and I'm changing, and I'm healthier, and I'm happier. But that neglect, as an example, my parents were too poor to take us to doctors when we were sick.
Mhm.
So when I got strep throat repeatedly, it destroyed my tonsils. Finally, they had to take them out in an emergency surgery. But that virus went to my heart when I was 16 and I got rheumatic fever
Wow.
and it destroyed my aortic valve. Fast forward, 60 years later, my aortic valve closed and I had to have emergency open heart surgery, which then led to a stroke, which then led to a chest infection. And then I had to have my sternum removed because
Yep.
of the infection. All of that happened. I'm not blaming my parents.
No.
I'm not blaming them, but that happened because of neglect, medical neglect,
Mhm.
and it destroyed my immune system, that neglect.
Yeah.
And, kids are not meant it's like a third world country. And I have story after story with my siblings of similar stats. I lost two brothers to heroin addiction as young adults. They couldn't take the pressure. I always thought it was a failure of judgment that they were just, weak. No, they were healing. They're trying to heal the way the only way they knew.
Yeah. And I mean, I wouldn't say they succumb to stress, more of they succumb isn't a word, to the impetus, the drive to feel good. And they kept going after that feel good feeling because they never had it
Natural.
from before,
It's
right?
natural. That's
Yeah.
how we're built. And, it gives us that little bump, that little dopamine rush. And normally it should be good things that do that for us,
Yeah.
not things that will kill us.
So two scientific terminologies I want to throw at you related to what we're talking about here. One is cognitive dissonance, which it's the same descriptor of what you're talking about, where you're brought up with this is what the world is like, and then as you get older, you see what the world is like, but your brain is saying, but this is real, and yet it's seeing something else that's real. You wind up in your head fighting with the reality of what is and what is not, the right thing, what is good, what is not good. And for some people, the struggle is difficult and they need things to sort of shut off that argument that's going on in their head. And in other people, the cognitive dissonance is, I'm going to prove it wrong. I'm going to prove it wrong. Like in your case, where you went after the positive because this makes you feel good. You're going after the positive. You're going after that, the response that says to the other part of your brain that's saying, this is what's real. You're going, no, look, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. And it's that fight that builds, and it builds stress, which builds a physiological response, which is negative internal fight that
Yep.
you're having.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
the other one want to throw at you is neuroplasticity, which is that response mechanism you were talking about, the dopamine response to negative things. So if you brought up in your life going, yeah, I expected it to be bad and it's bad, you get the dopamine rush. Yay, you've just given yourself a reward for realizing this was bad and yay, it's bad. And yet, if you rewire and you start looking at the good things and saying, yes, I know that's bad, but this is a good thing, and you give yourself a dopamine rush for the positives, you're starting to rewire your brain. That neuroplasticity alters to the point where you get rushes for good and not for the negative responses. So you lose that desire for addiction, even in the positive types of addiction, where you give yourself a rush for the things that happen as opposed to the things that would be better, that should happen.
Yes. So where did you get that knowledge, Stefan?
Way too much reading. I've actually done interviews with people that have worked with mental health, worked in the mental health field, and in speaking with them and doing the research that I do, you find things that sort of link to topics like yours that talk about the effects of the world around people and then how they internalize it. So cognitive dissonance is one of those things that happens to people. I know I've got it.
Yeah.
Um, and neuroplasticity is simply that brain conversation about rewards and the negative rewards that you give yourselves. And it does speak to the same thing that you're talking about because that as soon as you get a dopamine rush, that's a physiological response, and physiological response affect the rest of you. Even if it's just happening in your brain, it isn't.
Right. Yep. I didn't know those words 2 years ago, Stefan. I didn't, and they sounded like jargon and, just confusion to me.
Mhm.
But now they're starting to make sense because, I've done the same thing you've done. This thing with neuroplasticity, it's really a beautiful thing of how our minds are made. When we had these stress responses, it actually changed the structure and the circuitry of the brain.
Yeah,
The brain is plastic. Okay, that's where the term comes from. It's malleable. It can change.
yeah,
The good news is that it can change in the positive direction as well as the negative. So
exactly.
simple things, and I used to think of them as just foo-foo or girly, but simple things of mindfulness, simple things of gratitude. If you can think, um, I've heard people suffering deeply from childhood trauma say that their gratitude journal was the thing that brought them the most healing. And they don't really understand why. What
Mhm.
happens is positive experiences, positive memories will actually redo the damage in the brain and rebuild it, and it's measurable.
Yeah.
So that's the good news. Don't think that it's a life sentence. There's things you can do. I mean, one of the things I learned, I stumbled upon, is that I developed. I was asked to speak to the students at an alternative school, high school,
Mhm.
where all of the children had suffered severe childhood trauma, and they were struggling with addiction, suicide, crime. It was the worst of the worst. Okay, but I was one of them as a child. So I related and I got to speak to them. And what I realized was that they had no influence in their life that is a positive reminder of who they are, and that, and in fact to get spiritual, that someone does love them and that someone is God. If there's nobody else in your life. So I've written and about to publish a 365 day a year devotional geared towards those who are suffering from childhood trauma. Just have a daily dose of something positive, not preachy, not trying to convert people, but just a very positive that ends with a prayer for that individual. So yeah, we can change our minds and our brains, and don't turn your nose up at it like I did for so long. Research it. I have a website now, uactnow.com. It's United Against Childhood Trauma now, UACTNOW. In there is a link, is a tab that says the promise of healing. And it tells all the things you can do for self-help, even before you would make a decision to see a professional. Not all of us need professional therapy. Some of us can learn. some of us
I get the
learn.
tilt because I kind of go, you never
Some of us,
know.
some of us can learn. Another thing I found, which is I'm trying to rectify and reverse, is that it's sad, but it's a fact that there's a high percentage of healers, therapists that don't even understand neuroplasticity.
Yep.
They go back to cognitive behavior talking therapy, and it's not enough.
No.
It's not enough. So, this UACT organization that I've founded, we're going to be offering certification courses for healers
Mhm.
to bring them up to speed with the interventions that are working best, so that when a sufferer seeks help, it needs to be the right help.
Yeah.
Because if it's not the right help, they get re-traumatized and they come out of there thinking, I'm broken.
Yeah.
They can't fix me, so I'm resistant to therapy only because they had the wrong therapy.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm 100% behind that. Whew, you can definitely go to the wrong place, get the wrong advice. be given the wrong direction. And for you internally, it doesn't help. In fact, it brings it home that it's worse than it is
Wow.
better. And that's not the perspective you need. The worst part about this childhood trauma and any other kind of trauma that brings you into that mental state is the fact that you first have to have a desire to fix it. If you don't, somebody else telling you go and have somebody deal with it, it's not going to work. Doesn't matter how absolutely fantastic
Of
this
course.
therapy is.
Of
If you're
course.
not looking for it, it will not affect you. You will not be able to fix. So, physician, heal thyself is the first
Yeah.
step. But you
Yeah.
can't do it alone. I want to express that whole idea that you cannot on your own fix yourself. And it's not really fixing because there is no fix. You
Improving.
learn to accept,
Improving.
you learn to
Healing.
identify, you learn awareness, and you
Yep.
learn the motions, the activities that you can do to make things better for you in the now, as opposed to trying to alter what happened in the past. You don't have a time machine. You can't go back and fix any of that. But the point is that you need somebody else's perspective to help you see your own. You have your own blinders on, and you do from the very beginning, and you'll look around and go, I see that this is the way it is. And all you need is somebody to say to you, have you thought about it this way? And all of a sudden, you've got a new perspective. And that's all you really
That's
need.
that's I mean that's the beauty of what you're doing right now with this show is that people like you have both an opportunity and an obligation, right? To not just entertain, but to improve their lives. And in the book I talk about the mirror and the window. The mirror is you have to look at yourself first. You have to look at yourself first, heal thyself, right? You said the words, and then look out the window to help others. And it's all about awareness because I've my data shows that only 5% of us are aware that something happened at childhood that affects our life today. 95% of us are walking around ignorant and my job, my commitment, my life now is raising awareness to this. And as soon as we can make people aware, then we have the opportunity to bring healing. And the first thing we have to do is, the saying is, we're only as sick as our deepest secrets. Stop with the secrets.
Mhm.
Talk to someone you care about. Talk about what happened. Even if it was minor, if it's a memory, if it left a mark, it's worth talking about. And start that journey with somebody, have them walk side of you, alongside of you. We need lifelong attachment. It's not just in childhood.
That's
We
right.
need this as adults. We need loving relationships, that people we can trust,
The
a
word
hug, a
The word
mature
I would use would be community. We need community, a community of health, a community of mental health, if you want to say that, in that
exactly,
we're not
exactly.
alone. Like you say,
Yeah.
95% of people don't even know, they're not aware, they're oblivious to what the impact is of things that have happened in their childhood, in their past. And to have community reach out and say, hey, you want to talk about things? Some people will say, no, I don't want to talk about it. But when they see others talking about it, they feel encouraged. Hey, it's not so bad. They're not being judged. Maybe I can say something so I'm not being judged. And that's the beginning. You talk about the window and the mirror. Looking in the mirror, a lot of people won't. It's a very difficult process to look at yourself without putting your blinders on and see what is. But some people find that looking in the window and seeing others that are experiencing the same as them, feeling that sense of community and helping someone else brings the help to themselves as well because they see, oh, this helped them. Let me try that on me and I'll help myself in the same breath.
Yeah. The most disastrous outcome from childhood trauma is loss of connection with others. It's the shame that causes us to withdraw. We don't want to tell our story. We don't want others to see our shame.
Mhm.
So we make ourselves even less healthy by removing ourselves from community.
Yeah.
And we spent our first the first 5 billion years, a million years of evolution in tribes being extremely close to each other.
Yes.
And we've lost that.
Yeah.
We've lost that. And the shame pushes us further away. So, the thing I want to leave with people is it's not shame on you, it's shame off you that you have to think of, right?
Well, I mean, shame really should be something that's put on a shelf. We shouldn't be talking about shame in any way, shape, or form. We should talk about health. We should talk about you have an experience. The experience is something that's yours. There is no shame around having experiences in any way that I picked up a pen. That's an experience. As much as, if I use an example, oh, I was beaten as a child. That's an experience. It is not something that has a label around it called shame because it's something that happened and that's it. Now let's talk about how it's impacted me. If we can get away from that whole verbiage around shame and coloring the imagery around what happened to you and oh it's fault and blaming, get that out of the way and simply talk about it. If you had had a disease, if you had had an eye surgery or you had a tooth pulled or you had your tonsils out, you wouldn't feel shame about that. You'd talk about I had that happen. So
Yeah.
why do mental issues or experiences from a child perspective bring shame? You were a
Yeah.
child. What were you going to do? Suddenly stand up and say, I'd like to talk to the Prime Minister of Canada to fix this. I want to talk to the President of the United States and get this fixed with my family. Never going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you need to change careers. You need to be a therapist. I'll pay you. I'll pay you.
Some people actually talk to me about it that way, but I go, I'm not professional. I can't. I've got a
Well, you can be, hey,
perspective.
hey, you can be a coach. You can be a coach. You don't have to be a therapist. You can be someone that, you're actually that's what you're doing. I mean, that's what your show is about. So, yeah.
It's more of being how using the platform to allow people to understand there is non-uniqueness to their experiences. Whatever they've gone through, whatever they're feeling, whatever's happened in their past or currently happening, there are more than themselves out there. And there is a venue through which they can see this, hear about it, find resources that help them. And that's what my role is. I'm a conduit. I like to see myself as a
Yeah.
conduit
I
of
like
help.
that. I like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Much in the same way that your books do the same thing. It's you are the window. Your books are the window that allow people to look out and see I'm not alone and there is actual facts that that explain my situation and there's some conversation around help. And now we're going to get into those questions. Now we
All
have
right.
some questions
Go
for
for
you.
it. Go for
Okay,
it.
so so you talk about the fact that you go beyond diagnosis and gravity. You actually go into delivering hope and
Yes.
help.
Yes.
And what are the ways that individuals can get help? There's two parts to this. And obviously, awareness is the starting point. So, giving people the perspective of, oh, that's what's going on in my head. Now what? So,
Mhm.
do you go into any details about where individuals can get help?
Yes. Yes. So in the book, it's really three major sections. The first is what is this thing? What is childhood trauma? The second part is this is what it does to an individual and a community and humanity. So this is the price we're paying for it. And
Right.
then the third book is enough of the problem. Let's talk about the solution.
Okay.
So the book says there's really healing begins with you said it, Stefan. It begins with deciding to take the journey. I'm not going to be this way anymore. So if that doesn't happen, nothing will happen. So my message is start the journey, and you can start by just taking a very simple test online. You can go to ACE's just ACE test, and it'll come up, and you can score from 1 to 10, and it'll give you ranges of this is the severity level. It's not perfect, but it starts the conversation,
Right.
and then the journey begins with talking to one person. You pick one person, someone you trust, someone you love, someone who loves you. If you don't have that, and the reality is many people don't have that person in their life,
Mhm.
um, go to a church, go to a therapist. But that shouldn't be the first step. The first step should be understanding what this is. And there's a sequence of things that you can do for yourself that begins this journey. And the first three are critical. And it sounds trite, but this is the three. Focus on nutrition, on what you put in your body, because if you are unhealthy from an eating point of view, it's destroying more mitochondria and it's making everything worse. That's number one. Number two, get a good amount of sleep each night. If we are sleepless, it increases the flow of cortisol. It makes us go kind of spiral downhill, and then we start to take things to sleep. And then sometimes that's alcohol, pills, drugs. It's wrong. It makes everything worse. And the last of those three is move your body. Move your body, get some movement, get some exercise. I'm not talking about an hour at the gym 7 days a week. I'm talking about a walk in the park, walking your dog, taking the steps instead of the elevator. Move your body because that begins the healing process because it's all connected. It's all connected. So get your act straight on those three things and don't dismiss them. Don't think you're going to do those later. You can do those yourself. And then there's things like keeping a gratitude journal. Just begin thinking about it. It sounds girly, but it works. I do it. I do it. And then there's other things that fall into the category of mindfulness that are things like yoga, things like meditation, things as simple as breathing deeply for 2 minutes in the morning when you wake up to start your day. It does magic. It does magic. And then after that, if it's not getting you on the road to thriving, seek therapeutic help. And in the book and on the website, it tells you how to select a therapist for childhood trauma recovery. It gives you a list. And, I can't do it all fast enough, but a year from now, you'll be able to tell people to go to the UACT website, type in your zip code, and it'll give you a list of all certified childhood trauma therapists.
Fantastic.
That doesn't exist today.
No, no, I know
To
that.
get on that list, you have to be certified by UACT, that you have to take a test, that you do understand the neurobiology of a suffering adult,
Right.
not just talk therapy because you're depressed.
Mhm.
So it gives a lot of specifics in the book. If you're not suffering, you don't even have to read that third part. The first two parts bring awareness to the world around you, so that
Right.
you understand and you look at everyone differently. That jerk that you don't want to face as your neighbor, give him or her another chance.
Mhm.
Open up a conversation with them, show them some community and love. Think about what you can do for community. Think about who you could give this book to. Buy 10 of them and give them out for Christmas presents. Some will read them, some won't. But my journey is the first step is raising awareness. But I want to bring right behind that some solutions so we don't leave you hanging, right? And
Right.
then the third pillar, first is awareness, second is heal thyself, and the third is prevention. How are we going to go upstream and stop the need for foster children?
Right.
How are we going to teach mothers at birth the sacred 60 days and what impact it has on their child? They don't even know.
Yeah. And there's no book. The parent, as you say, Dr. Spock has a parenting book. If you've read that book,
Yeah,
not the book you
yeah,
want to have now, because that probably is Childhood Trauma 101, is what Dr. Spock's book, although
yeah.
I'm not saying that's what it is, but
Well, there's parts of it that are efficacious and there's part that's not. Let your child cry. Let your child cry is, in my mind, negligence. You don't let your child, I mean, it's personal opinion. I'm
Mhm.
now I'm now a half-wit expert. Um, but they need nurturing. They
Mhm.
need skin to skin. They
Yeah.
need to understand that when something is bothering them, sickness, hunger, a wet diaper, it needs to be attended to,
Yeah.
not left to cry through the night to
No.
tough
I think
love kills
I think
people.
the crying part is more related to as they get older, when they're aware that their crying actually has, they can have choices made by using it. It's not in the first year. I don't think that's where it applies, but I could be entirely wrong because, as you say, the first year is that mental growth period where a child's brain is developing a certain way and it's almost neuroplasticity 101 in that they understand triggers. They understand they're being neglected. If they cry and nothing happens, because they are simply developing at that stage. But once they reach a certain point of cognizance, awareness, then the crying becomes a tool. And that's where you utilize the I know what you're doing. Let's not play into it. I'm going to allow you to understand the
Of course.
consequences of
Of
choice.
course. Of
And
course.
so there is that line somewhere in there. But really, and I don't think you want to be the author of the book, a book on parenting for parents to understand this, with the impetus being childhood trauma abatement. Get rid of that whole concept by doing the right thing from the very beginning.
Yes.
Whether you're a single parent or whether you're a a family of two parents or even more than two parents, there's got to be something that's instructional enough to give them that I understand the things I need to do. It doesn't cover everything because every child is different, but it covers the necessary
Absolutely.
things, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, Stefan, you're right.
So it would behoove somebody to kind of start driving that. I'm looking at you, directly at you, to drive that through the organization that you've set up. My only concern, and here it is, I'm going to throw that other question at you. Approximately 43 to 45 million US adults, roughly 21% of the population, possess low literacy skills. 54% read at a sixth grade level. How does your book or any other literature that's related to this get to them? They won't read or they don't want to read, and they simply live life through experience. How do we communicate with them? How do we get to them?
Yeah, they never will, and that's a reality, and I accept that. But here's the planned solution is that we have an army of people who interact with the child other than the parent. Pediatricians, doctors, social workers, teachers.
Mhm.
So the reason I say social workers is that we have an epidemic of childhood trauma, but we have a crisis of foster care treatment in our country.
Yes.
These children are the worst of the worst. When they come into the system, they are already broken. They already have six or more ACEs, and they age out of the system. By the time they're 25, 70% of them are in the legal system.
Mhm.
So how do get back to your question? We have to turn teachers, clergy, ministers, um, the judicial system. We have to turn them into healers. And I'm not talking about therapists. I'm just saying the teacher in the classroom has no knowledge. In kindergarten, dealing with 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds, they have no idea of classroom management that comprehends those that are suffering childhood trauma.
Yep.
They don't know what the signs are. And I'm not asking them to be healers, but they need a new awareness and they need to know what to do. Instead of sending Johnny to the principal's office and just shaming Johnny more,
Mhm.
you know, Johnny needs a resource. Schools have counselors. They don't know what they don't know. So my biggest push in this work that I'm doing is to drive certification, to drive UACT, to be a UACT certified trauma responsive teacher. Not trauma informed. Trauma informed means I know about it.
Yeah.
Trauma responsive is I'm going to do something about it.
Exactly.
And so that all the counselors, that a school board will not hire a school counselor unless they're certified in trauma responsiveness. That's going to be my push. I'm going to get into policy. I'm going to get into government. Those who control the certification project. I'm going to work at the state level. I'm going to try to start I'm in Tennessee. I'm going to try to make Tennessee the first trauma responsive state. The Governor Lee, has a huge heart for children, but he doesn't know what he doesn't know.
Exactly.
That state, my state, is one of the few states that control all of the agencies that touch children, that reach out to children, social workers, the magistrates, the judges, the social workers, the teachers, the foster parents have to be certified, but they get 2 hours of training and a prayer, and then they're off and they don't know what to do. So they give up in 6 months and send the child back, re-traumatize the child, start
Yeah.
the cycle all over again. We don't even know what we're doing. We're creating a factory to prison
Yeah.
through what we're doing and not addressing it. So um, I don't know how many years I have left, Stefan, but I need to get this thing going and pass it on to other leaders and people with hearts that
Mm.
are going to take the torch and carry it. And we're going to treat it like we treated tobacco, or like we treated HIV, or like we treated seatbelts,
Mm.
smoking. No one is talking about eradicating the thing that's killing more people than anything in our country.
Yeah, you need to build the community, Michael. You need
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
build that group, the UACT. I'm sorry, I'm bad with acronyms. That needs to be a community of people that you can mentor and drive forward. As you say, you don't know how long you're here for. That shouldn't be an impetus. What it should be is, I'm already teaching the next generation of me. I'm already educating and I'm already driving that sense of urgency into so many people that everyone is going to be pushing this. And then it leaves you with that sense of, I I'm doing my work. It's still going out there. It's a very Mother Teresa kind of feeling of, there are
Yeah.
so many people that are like me now that are doing the same thing, and all I can do is sit back and feel pride that it's become a movement beyond a movement. It is beyond just myself. It is that global
Yes.
perspective on things. Because just saying Tennessee, when you know it's happening in Texas, and you know it's happening in Greenland, you know that it's happening in Africa, you know that it's push until the world is looking at it from the perspective of, we need to solve this issue like we need to solve world hunger. All of these things need to be addressed as the driving force to maintain humanity as humanity.
Yeah. Well said. Let's go. Let's go.
I do have one more
Sure.
question that relates to not only to, I mean, Tennessee. I know that this is a fact. I know that it's a fact in the US, and I know it's a fact globally. There are groups and communities that see therapy and help as having no value. That whole mandate of suck it up, princess. It's just something that happened in the past. You can get through it, keep moving. Today is today, tomorrow's tomorrow. How do we get to them and those people that have no ability to afford any kind of care? How do
Yeah.
we get them help? How do we get them involved? How do we get to them?
Yes. So very, that's the $10 million question. So first, I want to try to, brand this UACT. So UACT, the acronym is UACT. So think about it as, did you act? Did you do anything? Did you do anything? Right? So it's United Against Childhood Trauma is the foundation. And that's going to be the army of people that's going to solve this problem.
Right.
So we are going to raise a super fund. We're going to raise within 2 years $500 million as a super fund. And we're going to educate all the therapists. We're going to create a new class of healer. They're going to be, we'll call them coaches, but they're going to have enough to handle probably 75% of the healing that's required. The other 25% are going to need clinicians, psychiatrists, psychologists, right? Most people can't afford it. They can't
Right.
afford it. So we're going to have a system. I'm not going to rely on the government. We're going to create it ourselves where we have a machine that offers that covers the cost of childhood trauma recovery. And right now we don't have anywhere near enough therapists to do that. But we're going to create these centers inside schools, inside churches. There's 350,000 churches in America.
Mhm.
1.2 billion people, no, sorry, 120 million people go to church every Sunday. Imagine having a first aid stand at every church for trauma responsive care, not religion, not trying to convert you, offering healing.
Yep.
And each church, a church of 2,000 will have about 20 volunteers who are certified to start the journey with you and to open the conversation. And there'll be no cost for that.
Right.
And I'm gonna challenge churches to hang a banner over their church that says, "Welcome, we are a trauma responsive church."
Yeah.
Who's going to say no to that? They're the ones who don't believe in therapy. right? They're going to let their pastors continue to pray over them, and they're not going to get healed.
Hmm.
That's how we're got to do it. We've got to create um, we've got to create 10 million healers in this country who
Yeah.
have the knowledge. It's going to take a generation, and we're not going to let money stand in the way. And I'm going to create a flood of interest because we're going to wake up the world to this need. And my fear is that we're not going to have enough healers to address the issue.
Yeah.
So there's going to be an interactive app in about 9 months that allow you to go onto that app and interact in your language with your religious beliefs,
Mm.
AI driven,
Ooh.
to take you through a very guarded first few steps. And that's where you're going to be able to push the button, put your zip code to get a healer in your neighborhood. But we've got to use technology.
Yes.
Got to use technology,
Yep.
you know we can have avatars. We can have you recreated as an image that can answer questions that were cleansed and blessed by a team of mental health experts,
Yep.
but a guy who they trust.
They
Which
could feed the information through. I know that this worked. I'm sort of twisting the conversation in the sense that AI has been used in post-secondary education as TAs, where the individuals thought they were talking to a real human TA. And they worked so well. They answered questions about the topics. They talked to them about study practices. They talked to them about work ethic and work practices for the students. And they thought they were talking to a human being. They were talking to an AI. As long as the information is focused and what's the word I'm looking for? Non-health related in the sense that they're not giving them options. They're not telling them things, like an actual clinician would do. They're simply
no,
guiding them
no.
in the conversation to get to a point where they're actually going to have a conversation. That would be phenomenal. And a technology currently exists that allows
Yes,
that to happen.
yes, yep,
Um,
yep.
the idea of having a community of, and I'm going to not correct, but I want to suggest don't refer to yourself as an army of, refer to yourself as a community of, because that has a safer connotation.
I agree. I agree. Great. I will never use that word again. Yeah,
The
yeah.
third thing is, it's almost like you're establishing a St. Jude style of medical practice practicing in the sense that St. Jude is all donation based, helping children with cancer. You should develop a St. Jude style environment where you're going to set up community offices of practitioners. All of it is donation based funding,
Yes.
globally donation based funding, so you can actually become global. Don't just, you start somewhere. I know you say it's going to take so many people. Start. Once it
Yeah.
starts, the avalanche occurs. You get the first impact and the snow starts to fall and everything falls with it because it's a positive thing, not a negative thing. So people will see it and react to it.
Let's hope. And we, as far as resources, we're already paying it. We pay. The United States spends $14 trillion a year as a result of childhood trauma. It's a fact. It's data. That's greater than our defense budget. Imagine repurposing just a small amount of that, taking it away from crisis and incarceration costs and dealing with overdoses to healing, to prevention, to first aid, right?
If you take the conversation and take it to the private sector, imagine the cost savings from people leaving because of stress leave, people leaving because, they've had a family incident. All of these things suddenly get charged to productivity. And the companies would go, you mean we can have people that are more productive and less likely to leave on stress leave and less likely to leave on personal leave issues because we've eliminated the cause, the actual root cause that's causing this situation across business units globally or just nationally for the US, those
So we're
companies would
so
jump on
aligned.
board with billions of dollars of investment.
Yeah, I show a case study in my book of a corporation. The corporation is Johnson and Johnson, my alma mater, 140,000 employees. They are losing $1.2 billion a year in lost productivity, and I
Mhm.
can prove it.
Yep.
So imagine if we could save 10% of that,
Yep.
$140 million a year. What
Mhm.
would you do with 140 from that corp? Would you donate 10 million of it to UACT? because
That's what
we've
I'm getting at.
right.
14, 10%,
Yeah.
10%, 14.
That's right. So you're right on, and it's it boggles my mind, and I've been at it. I keep shaking my head. In fact, I have an AI assistant that I use, for grammar and those kind of things. I wrote to that AI assistant and says, I think I'm losing my mind. I don't know who to talk to, but here's what's happening. And he wrote back, no, this is called living with purpose. This is what happens when you live with purpose. So ride the wave and embrace it. It's all good. You're not losing your mind. It's all going to sort out. Go do it. You said the same thing. You said the same thing.
Well, that's just it. You have the impetus is behind you on the data that you've got, the books that you've written. The drive is there just from our conversation. I can see it. I get this sense of, yeah, I'd join, I'd jump on board right, today. What you need is to get a publicist to get you speaking engagements with corporate leaders, CEOs, go to corporate branding sessions where they've got a grouping of CEOs, bring the presentation material and say, hey, you spend $10 million, 10 less than 10% of what you're losing, and we can make that stop.
Yeah. So
UAC
Stefan,
can make it stop. Yeah.
Stefan, in June, which is only a few months away, I'm launching another book, and the title of that book is "Bleeding in the Boardroom." And it's a book on what's happening to corporate America. And my prayer, my hope is that it will start a stampede of people to UACT so
Mhm.
that we can certify their corporations so that they can begin the savings and they can begin the healing. Corporations talk big about corporate responsibility, social responsibility. It's time we're gonna ask them to put their money where their mouth is and see if they really want to help humanity.
Yep.
And there'll be a group of companies that will. I know that. I know they will. Johnson and Johnson will trip over it to get to it. But we need to start this, and it's beginning, excuse me, it's beginning with you. I mean, this message that you're spreading, I'm going to ask you to think, what can you do? How can you act, Stefan? What can you say to your following to incite them, to help them move to join this community, right?
And what I would say is, A, read the books. That's the first thing because there's information in there. I can't convey all of it because they're pretty hefty books. It's not like a
That's
5-minute conversation.
the
Um,
tone.
And that way, it grounds them in the data that they need to move forward with the organizations they work with, the communities that they live in, to look, to become aware, to actually open their eyes to the reality. As much as everybody keeps it quiet, seeing is believing. And it's
Yeah.
that first step. Take a look around you and see what it is. Not just a look around externally, look inside, look around you and go, hey, I might be one of those people. I might actually have the same situation. If I can help me, I can help others. That's the first step from this communication. This presentation is starts with the individual, becomes a wave. From your perspective, it's don't wait for the book to come out. Actually go hit some corporations and start talking to them and get the ball rolling
Yes.
today,
Yes.
now, you
Yes.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe a CEO is listening, right? Maybe it's
Exactly. There might be more than one that are listening and saying, hey, that's really interesting. Who do I reach out to? Who do they reach out to, Michael? How
yes.
do they get
So
in contact?
so the best way is to remember my name, Michael J. Menard, and go to michaeljmenard.com. And everything you need is there. The
Okay.
pathway to healing, the UACT message. You can get the book as soon as it's available, March 19th. You can click the most important thing. Go to that website, click to join the mailing, to join the community because I send out an update every week, and that list is growing by 500 a day. So I want to be up to 10 million within launch time for the book. So please go to michaeljmenard.com. Join this community. It doesn't cost anything. You're going to get information. You're going to have an opportunity to join the community and make a contribution to humanity. And I'm not talking about financial. I mean, we need that too. But I'm talking about your involvement and you starting this journey today and looking in the mirror and then look out the window. And let's all hold hands and do this thing.
So the other part to it is you're saying they join the community, they can become aware and they have the information. What of the CEOs that are watching right now and the ones that you're going to be communicating with shortly, how do they contribute in the other fashion? Where's the machine that starts the ball rolling for
Yes.
that
So,
environment, that
yes.
organization?
Yeah, so there is a button on as soon as you go to michaeljmenard.com or to uactnow.com, there's a button there for donate now. It's tax deductible. It is a 401 3, what is it? There's initial C. It's a legitimate large nonprofit organization. 100%, 100% of what you donate goes to trauma awareness or healing. So we are all at this point volunteers. There's no budget, there's no cost.
Right.
We deploy it to back to the community. And I told you, I need $500 million
Yeah.
to do, and it sounds crazy, but if everyone suffering from childhood trauma gave $10, it would be over with. It
Yep.
would be over with. So
Yep.
just if you can send $1, send $2, send 10. If you're a corporation, send $10,000. Join or get in touch with me to partner with becoming a UX sponsor, a
Mhm.
corporation that's a sponsor to help us build this out. And get the FOMO going within corporations, fear of missing out.
Yep.
Who's going to be first? It's starting today, actually. It's starting with this podcast.
Fantastic. So
So thankful for having
oh,
me.
I'm thankful for having you here. Do you have the actual business structured proposal that talks about how you want to build the community engagement bodies, the possible buildings that house the health specialists where people can go? Has
Yes.
that been put into place? Have you got that grounded? Because people
The,
will
the,
ask.
the framework is there. So the framework of here, if you look at here's how we're going to solve the problem. There's a button there. Here's how we're going to solve the problem. It has all the detail you could ever want. Everything I've said here, you can keep drilling down deeper. If you're a teacher, you can drill right into what can I do as a teacher who wants to be trauma responsive? What can I do? How can I start this journey? Uh,
Fantastic.
there's all enough there to get going. But the most important thing is to connect with this community so that as this unfolds, so as the first course goes online for foster children awareness for foster parents,
Right.
that you can click the link and go to it, and it's all going to be free. So stay in tune so you can communicate with us and with your community so that you can we'll challenge you to get people to join so that we can I have a dream that's going to be a reality where maybe a year from now we're going to have UAC Day where everyone is going to wear their t-shirt that's got their ACE score on the back, and we're going to be proud of it, and we're going to talk about it, and when
Hmm.
we see somebody with a 9, we're going to give them a fist bump as we take that walk, and we're going to realize that we're all together, that we're all hurting,
Yeah.
and it will open conversations. It will give us will give people more grace. We'll have bigger hearts. We'll understand, and maybe even spread a little love, right?
Oh,
A
you
little
used the
love.
L
Come
word.
on,
What are you
come
doing?
on. That's how Sister Teresa did it. That's how she did it.
Yeah, I'm 100% behind you. I am glad we had this conversation. I'm absolutely driven that I hope the listeners are doing what you have suggested right now. Go online. Well, after you finish watching the program, go online and register, get the feedback, get some information. Actually, do you have a mechanism where people can supply you with information, ask you questions, feed?
Yes, yes, yes. So on my website, there's a button, Talk to Mike, and you can link it. It goes right to me, and I'll respond within 24 hours.
Fantastic. See, these are the things that a lot of
Yes.
sites don't have. They're
Yep.
impersonal. You join in and you go, okay, so how do I give my information? How do I ask questions? How do I'm not sure what button to push. What do I do? They can ask you, or they can ask, it might make sense for some of the structured stuff to have an AI guy go, oh, this is the way you link through and you get this
Give
information.
me some ideas. I know ideas are bouncing around in all of your minds right now of what I could do. Tell me, help me, join me,
Yeah,
right?
fantastic. Absolutely fantastic, Mike. It has been an absolute pleasure. I hope that it is Mike, not Michael, that I've been calling you Mike and calling you Michael, one and the
It's
other.
either. It's
Oh,
either.
okay.
It's either.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I go by both.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's been an absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed the conversation. I hope we do this again. Maybe after your launch, we can get into it. If you start
Sounds
getting
great.
major sponsors, I would love to have
Please
this
do.
conversation again, just to give that FOMO to other organizations that
Yes. Let's
watch.
go. Yeah.
So let me know, keep in touch, send me a message when things are starting to avalanche because I definitely want to come back to the conversation. It's been an
Awesome.
honor and a pleasure, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye for now.